This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 144. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. On today's episode, anybody else wondering where Austin Theory is? Well, we've got the lowdown on what's going on with him, as well as, can you believe it? Dolph Ziggler got fined for a set of tights that he wore back at SummerSlam in 2018. We're going to tell you all about that. And, of course, we've got the Doc's Impact Review. We're going to take a look at what's going on with the biggest topics and trends in wrestling. And doing it with me, as always, he's the aforementioned Doc, my cousin, your cousin, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
All is good, baby. This week of wrestling was awesome. Shocking.
Wait, hold on. Was it awesome? Was it awesome?
I thought that, a certain company put their best foot forward and surprised people, put on a great show. A certain other company relied on a ratings gimmick, and we'll talk about that,
Absolutely.
But, unfortunately, they got rewarded for that gimmick, but I'm thinking that next week, after people caught wind of what WWE was trying to do, the ratings are going to tank.
Yeah, so before we jump into Raw, we bag all over Raw, because that's where that ratings gimmick was. Let's start with what took place on Friday night with SmackDown. And I think we've got some good signs here, right? We talked about Big E getting a singles push last week, and this is something that has been long overdue. Long overdue. Big E gets into a match with Miz, and Morrison's on the outside, and he runs a little bit of interference. In the end, Big E has a fantastic match and beats the Miz with, again, some of that interference from Morrison. Is it a good sign that Big E is already getting this type of a push? Because the Miz is a big deal, Morrison's a big deal, and that's two competitors versus one very, very large Big E. In my estimation, I think this is a great sign that they're going to legitimately take Big E seriously and give him the well-deserved push that he needs and he should have gotten a long time ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Big E deserves the push. He's getting some attention. Somebody's in his corner, whether it be Bruce Pritchard or somebody in the back. If it's Vince McMahon, hey, he deserves it. It's the right call. Unfortunately for me, I'm a huge fan of The Miz. I just thought that if you recall way back at the beginning of the year, we provided a list of wrestlers we thought were going to have big years. One of them was EC3 and the other one was The Miz. Looks like you and I both don't know shit about who's getting pushes. But circumstances changed and Big E's getting a push. Dude can wrestle and he's got the look. He's a big athletic dude. And like we said last week, you would think that he deserved it, but really he's getting the push because his two other compadres are injured. So however we got to this point, whether he deserved it or it's just because of circumstances, it's nice to see.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, to kind of wrap up Friday Night SmackDown, we got reintroduced to The Fiend. This is something that has been building now ever since the Swamp match with Braun Strowman. And The Fiend ends up taking out Alexa Bliss. If you remember from the Swamp match that took place at the horror show known as Extreme Rules, Alexa Bliss was featured to be Sister Abigail, and she was calling out to Braun Strowman. So in this iteration of The Fiend, he is playing these mind games with Braun Strowman, and he attacks Alexa Bliss. And remember, Alexa Bliss and Braun Strowman go way back to their team Little Big. I think they did a ride-along as well. So there is an established relationship here between these two wrestlers. And the fact that The Fiend is now preying on this, I think this is fantastic character development. You know, we bag on WWE a lot, but sometimes some of the things they do really, really well are their production, and sometimes they get character development right when they allow the character or the person portraying the character to have some say. I think Bray Wyatt gets a ton of say in his characters, especially with The Fiend. And what you have here now is you've got a guy playing a masterful game of head games with Braun Strowman, and we're getting the fortune to see this play out every single Friday night. I love this edition of The Fiend and what he's doing to Bray Wyatt right now. I think the mind games are fantastic.
It's among the best stories that's being told on SmackDown. 100% I agree with you. It was cool to see. It's a great storyline. Alexa, you were just kind of, the way in which they told it too, where he creeps up and then he's like, okay, is he going to do it? No, he's not going to do it. Oh, then he does it. He attacks her. It was told and shot perfectly. I'm all for it. And all you can ask for in storylines is, does it draw you in? And I'm interested. I want to see the payoff. And however it's going to play out, I think both you and I assumed that the Bray Wyatt, Fiend, Braun Strowman angle was going to deliver. And so far, so good. It's been entertaining.
Let's fast forward now to Monday. I thought Friday night in SmackDown, I thought it was a pretty good show.
Very entertaining, yes.
I can't say the same thing for Monday Night Raw. And this might have more to do with Vince McMahon, who ended up ripping up the script hours before the taping. Going into the taping, they only had 2 segments that were planned. Everything else was done on the fly. Does it surprise you that Vince did this yet again? And does it surprise you that by Vince doing this, we kind of get the results that we got with what I think both of us could deem a dumpster fire of a Monday Night Raw?
Dude, Raw was so bad. I was like, okay, who's the debuting faction? What's going on with Shane McMahon? And then you started to see, oh my God, it's not a debut of Shane McMahon. He's hosting Underground Action. It looked like a janky Fight Club. And I was like, no, this can't be the idea that they took time and met with and wanted to air. This is not what I thought it was going to be. Monday Night Raw, I thought, had the potential to be something that was interesting, but they just took it off the rails with the whole underground wrestling Shane McMahon. I don't know. When I saw it, I just hated it. I took in Monday Night Raw hoping that, whatever was going to be advertised was going to deliver, but I just sat there with my head in my hand just going, what is this? So if you paid attention to Detroit Podcast, it's going to come. I'm just asking for the book straight up. You know what? I'm tired of talking about it. I know that you and I, if we just sat with a couple bourbons and a cigar and said, all right, who's getting over? We would write a better show. I never thought I would say that. I never thought that I could say, okay, I'm going to put a couple characters down. Dude, we would just put 6 matches out and 1 promo, and I think it would have been better than whatever that overproduced nonsense was. It was just overproduced, and I don't know, it's just, I don't know, I can't explain in words how weird that shooting was. I'm not interested in that. I don't know who does that appeal to? A wrestling fan, look, and I get it, Vince is desperate for ratings, and it's a ratings game, but someone tweeted it out perfectly, and it might have been a current wrestler or someone from another company. It's simple. If you want to draw ratings, tell compelling stories, make new stars, have wrestling that makes sense. I think you and I could have figured that out. Not this whole herky-jerky, weird creative ideas that make no sense that everyone knows and is going to pan and is going to be just for ratings. And you did a good job of hyping it up, but you under-delivered. And if you keep doing that repeatedly, you're going to piss off your fans, and I was one of them.
I think you put it very eloquently. And what you had was early in the day on Monday, you had the press release that Shane McMahon was going to be on TV. And that was your ratings gimmick. That was what was supposed to draw you in. Because if you remember maybe 2 years ago when Shane McMahon came back, I think it was here in Detroit he came back. It was awesome. It was great to see him. This was not the same thing. This was Fight Club Shane McMahon. I thought the Fight Club angle was bad. I thought it was gaudy. I thought it was silly. And if you fast forward to Tuesday morning, I don't know if you follow EC3 on Instagram, but I follow EC3 on Instagram, and I think he's pretty entertaining. There were a lot of drawn connections to the promo video he did before he went to Impact. The weekend of Slammiversary, he put together this large video, this compilation video. I think it was roughly maybe 5-10 minutes. It shows him winning this match in basically a Fight Club setting. You had these masked guys wearing their EC3 t-shirts, similar to the weird faction that was burning stuff down. And then you have, again, the Fight Club that takes place. And he draws this connection that basically WWE's creative is just stealing stuff that fans are invested in. You know, EC3 now goes to Impact, and I don't want to say he's the biggest star out there right now, but he is a guy who has breathed new life into his career, and I think WWE is like, oh, hey, what happened? What's going on here? How did he do that? So now they're like, where can we mine some creative ideas from? And then they just kind of start taking things, and they do a really bad job of executing them. I thought Raw overall was absolutely awful. Whether it be the Shane McMahon angle, whether it be some of these stories being told in the ring, whether it be some of the fights, I think one of the only good things that came out of it is it sounds like Nia Jax is actually going to be suspended, but probably not. It's all work. I think the angle with Samoa Joe and Seth Rollins was probably the best thing that took place on Monday Night Raw. And it had me on the edge of my seat because I was like, is Samoa Joe coming back? Like, Samoa Joe has always been a great promo, always cuts a very intense, in-your-face promo. And he is staring down a deranged Seth Rollins that I know you don't like, but I do like this iteration of his character, along with Buddy Murphy, and basically tells him that, you know what? It wasn't just Tom Phillips who was laughing at you last week. I was laughing at you. And if you've got a problem with it, I'll smack you into next week. And we could do it right here, right now. And Samoa Joe goes to take his shirt off. We come back from a commercial. This is what I don't like about WWE with some of their commercial breaks. This was a poorly timed commercial break because you want to see Samoa Joe getting ready for some action. Next thing you know, you come back and Dominic's in the ring and he's taking out Seth Rollins. And I'm just like, what happened with Samoa Joe? I wanted to see Samoa Joe.
Right.
Like, if Samoa Joe was to come back, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Would you bring Samoa Joe back or would you leave him on the commentating table? And I think he's fantastic on the commentating table. I don't think his body holds up in the ring. But I was excited. I was more excited, I think, surprisingly, to myself at least, to see Samoa Joe almost get back into action. How did you feel about that? Like, I had one of those moments where, kind of taking it in, I was shocked at my own physical reaction to it and my own emotional reaction to it. Because a couple weeks ago, I said Samoa Joe should just stay right where he's at because he's so damn good at it. But the thought of him getting back in the ring, I got super excited for.
No, yeah, we need him back in the ring because WWE doesn't have any star power. It's so unfortunate. It's so ridiculous. But unfortunately, the rest of the characters aren't doing it. They're not over. And it begs the question, and I think it's a bigger discussion, is, and we've talked about it numerous times, WWE is not developing stars, nor do they want to. And that is so crazy to me because the reason why Vince would not want to do that is because if the star gets too big, he or she's going to want a boatload of money and could leave and then could leverage the company. And Vince, obviously has had major defectors. He doesn't want to ever do that again. But you're seeing in a time now where there's no fans, the product is not good enough because I don't have to watch Monday Night Raw. You could just skip it altogether, catch a quick review. You can just be like, all right, there's 50 other podcasts out there that are reviewing Raw that you can just catch and be like, yeah, you know what? There's great wrestling shows on Sirius XM, our podcast. It's something that you tell yourself that this product right now in WWE, it hasn't risen to the standard that really long-term professional wrestling fans would like. And so for me, if they continue to put on shows like that, I'm not investing the time because that was quite ridiculous. I am kind of fascinated that my mind goes back to when Dominic was, if you remember that match at the pay-per-view where Eddie Guerrero fought Rey Mysterio for custody of Dominic. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, I saw that photo. I'm like, I remember that angle. And now we're fast forwarding to see Dominic in the ring against Seth Rollins. I'm excited for that. So they did good with that. But other than that, not too much else caught my attention from Monday Night Raw because of the sour taste, the poor angles left for me.
So before we leave Monday Night Raw, and it should be left in a dumpster somewhere and set on fire. You brought up something very interesting when you were talking about Vince McMahon and his thought process with a superstar not leveraging the company. See, I think that's such flawed thinking, and I think it's flawed for a couple different reasons. If you go back to the Monday Night Wars, when WWE was getting it handed to them by WCW, the reason that people started to come over to WWE and the reason that they ended up winning the ratings war was because you had interesting characters. You had guys like a Stone Cold Steve Austin. You had The Rock. You had a Mick Foley. You had a D-Generation X. You had guys that people were invested in, who told good, compelling stories, who made you want to stop what you were doing to watch. The night that Mankind ends up winning the WWE title, WCW, in all of their cocky brashness, let everybody know that, hey, you can go over to that other station and you can watch somebody win their championship belt, or you can stay here and you can take this in. And Samoa Joe Mankind was a character that everybody was getting behind and everybody was getting invested in. So the moment that they let you know that he was going to go and win the WWE championship, everybody switched the station. And that was the first win that WWE had. And it was because of a character like Mankind that people were invested in and wanted to see win. I feel like Vince is kind of lost in this time warp because I think he forgets how he got to where he is. Like, I think he forgets history, or he just kind of rewrites it his own way. And that's very messy. Like, I know you bought WCW, but they were kicking your ass, man, for 83 straight weeks. And if it wasn't for their cocky brashness, you might not have ever got that win. You might not have. And if it wasn't for a character like a guy like Mankind, who was a guy who was an underdog, he was this, I don't want to say he was a nobody, but he was not what The Rock was. He was not what Stone Cold Steve Austin was. He was a guy that people related to for a bunch of different reasons, because he wasn't in the best of shape. He wasn't a guy who looked like he could be an Adonis. He was just a guy who looked like he fell out of a back room at a bar. And you were like, that guy looks like he's been through some shit. And you're like, I like that guy because I've been through some shit too. And that's what it was. And I think Vince has lost sight of all of that in all of his deranged madness. Do you want to go, I'm going to give you the option here on where we go and where we pivot. Do you want to go with your Impact review because that took place on Tuesday, or do you want to continue with WWE and wrap up what took place on NXT?
No, let's talk Impact for a moment because obviously the NXT was centered around something huge that's actually a story that people can get invested in. And that was awesome. And definitely we'll talk about it. But I thought if you missed Impact, you missed some storyline development. I thought that there were some good matches. EC3, unbelievable. He addressed the Impact fan base, and he vowed to win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship to burn its legacy. And his pre-taped work is among the best of his career. And it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I thought that the Wrestle House segment was pretty funny. And the segment that really highlighted everything for me was the end, because I really fell for it. I thought Rich Swann was done. He comes out and he's touting this gut-wrenching announcement, and he cuts this promo and he's talking about the fact that, he's had a devastating ankle leg injury, and the doctor's telling him that he's going to walk with a limp for the rest of his life. And he recalls how much he's been busting his butt to try to get cleared to wrestle at Slammiversary, but it's just not working out. And I'm like, the hard work, and I fell for it. All of a sudden we see Eric Young come out, and we're like, this is an angle, and this is good. And Rich Swann pulled off that promo like a professional, and it was awesome. I just thought that, what a way to allow Eric Young to get back into it, then to have a really cool situation there, to have a payoff that's going to potentially take place in a match. And that's awesome. That's all you can ask for, right? And I just think that if there's an opportunity for it to take place, then it'll be pretty good. And I think that the surprise factor was there. It was good storytelling, and seeing Eric Young bash him. I don't know, for me, I like seeing people get beat up with their own, with their own crutch. So it was great because I bought in. I was like, this is done. I was like, okay. There's another wrestler that just had his career end, but now you have an invigorated Eric Young and Rich Swann that can have a payoff. So I was invested in that. Overall Impact was really good. And I think to harken back to why people are upset with WWE is because the likes of Eric Young, EC3, have discussed this quote-unquote broken system. And the problem that you're seeing is that they're describing a system where everything's the same. A wrestler's got to sell the same. They got to do the promo the same. They're not allowed creative freedom to do unusual type stuff. And that's why you're starting to see, stuff that has the touch of Triple H is usually decent, but the stuff that's pre-programmed and quote-unquote corporate on Raw and SmackDown for the bigwigs is just kind of tailored to an audience that doesn't include you and I, guys in our late 30s and early 40s. That show is not tailored for us, and we're starting to notice it, where other companies like Impact and AEW, they're like, you know what, we don't really have to tailor our audience to a bunch of 8-year-olds. And I think that's why you and I are leaning a little bit more toward Impact, NXT, and AEW, is because it's not cookie cutter. It's storytelling. And that's, I think, the secret's out. Tell good stories, have angles that people want to invest in, have a payoff, have good wrestling, and you will deliver. So Impact was good. It was a solid B+ show that was worth watching.
Yeah, so Impact is doing a great job since, I don't want to say it was a hard reset, but I think probably the best way you can describe it, since their hard reset, and you're getting the likes of a guy like Eric Young. You already talked about some of the great work EC3 is doing. You're also getting a guy like Rich Swann, who was in WWE. Yep. He's been doing fantastic work in Impact as well. So you're getting a ton of talent that is being allowed to execute and work off of their abilities and what they do really, really well. Let's transition into what took place on Wednesday, and we're going to save AEW because I think AEW was fantastic. I think you do as well. I think that's what you were alluding to when you were speaking earlier. But let's talk about NXT, because I thought NXT was really, really good, especially the way it ended. And this goes back to last week when Adam Cole went on Pat McAfee's show, and they got into a bit of a pissing contest, and Adam Cole ends up breaking a set of headphones, breaks a microphone, and really gets into McAfee's face and basically cusses him out after McAfee kind of provoked him. McAfee gets invited down to the ring to watch the Undisputed Era, watch Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly fight for the NXT Tag Team Championship belts. Roderick Strong and Adam Cole are there ringside to support him and egg him on. And as the show's going on, McAfee and Adam Cole earlier in the day were supposed to have squashed this beef. McAfee is talking to Todd Phillips about everything that kind of took place earlier in the day, and as the match is unfolding, he starts to make subtle jabs at Adam Cole, at Undisputed Era, and really starts to push Adam Cole's buttons, so much so that Adam Cole, in the middle of the match, walks over to McAfee, who's at the commentating desk, and basically says, "You don't think I can hear you? I can hear everything you're saying. I'm going to advise you to shut up." And basically tells him to be quiet and to change his tone. And McAfee then takes it one step further. This ends up with Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish getting distracted. They end up losing the match, not winning the titles. And it becomes this pissing contest between McAfee and Adam Cole, where Adam Cole is getting held back, McAfee's getting held back, and they're going back and forth. McAfee is getting escorted out. He comes back around and basically makes a short joke to Adam Cole. Adam Cole then is laid out across the desk trying to grab at McAfee while people are holding him down, trying to keep them separated. McAfee then gives a hard boot to Adam Cole's face, knocking him out cold. Triple H gets involved, pushing McAfee away. I thought this was a fantastically executed angle. This was basically 10 days worth of build, and I thought it was very, very good. I'm not sure where we're going. It looks like McAfee and Adam Cole are going to get in the ring. If I remember correctly, McAfee has been working out. So this is going to be fun to see kind of where this goes. I like this. I thought this was a really good angle.
I loved it too, because you had McAfee with that little comment like, "This place is messy." And he just kind of, after the kick heard round the world. And if you look at it, dude's only 33. So if he spent the last 6 months getting the basics of wrestling, dude, if he works out for 6 months, I hope it's more than just a one-off. I hope that, you know what, we got a character here that maybe could have a stable, or at the very least could be a regular featured player. The problem is he's got a radio show, and it makes it really complicated to travel. But I think this was great. I think it's an opportunity to make some noise, because Pat McAfee is a natural entertainer. So who better to get in there and mix it up? I think that, styles make angles and stuff like that. So I think Adam Cole could give Pat McAfee a really good match and make him look really good. Now, McAfee is more of the character where it's probably not going to be a whole heck of a lot of moves. You're not going to see arm drag, hip toss, running through the ropes, stuff like that. You're going to see kicks and punches and probably a lot of body slams and suplexes. But if it's a story that can be told right in the ring, I would even say if you want to kind of make this a scenario where this is the departure of Adam Cole, hell, I would not be opposed if Pat McAfee goes over. If it's at SummerSlam and you build a star, or if you kick off Adam Cole's next main angle, Pat McAfee aligns with someone like a Baron Corbin or someone else that's a heel and starts a new faction that he is going to take over in NXT as well. So it's open. There's a lot of different ways to go with it. But I just hope that they don't just go the corny route and Adam Cole wins and that's that. Because I think McAfee has a look. He's unique. He's got a personality. And you can have a surprise happen that's creative, maybe even more than I am. and shoot Pat McAfee to the moon because he's got something there. Big size, big dude, personality, has the gift of gab. If you can match up his wrestling skills in a year, dude's only 33 years old. And that kick was delivered pretty strongly. It made that noise. So it was believable. And to see Triple H push him, they did it and filmed it correctly. And it made for a really interesting, and the wrestling community liked it because NXT, while they didn't defeat AEW in the ratings, their numbers went up. So people caught wind of it and it drew people in. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah, I thought the kick was surprisingly good. It looked so realistic. It sounded so clean. Look, Pat McAfee is an athlete. He's a very athletic guy. And like you said, he's young enough and he's durable enough and he has the athletic prowess to be able to pull it off. And I'm going to be really interested to see what he does when he gets in the ring and he starts bumping around, because I thought it was a fantastic angle. I thought it was executed perfectly, and I really want to see more from McAfee. You're right. He is a character. He draws you in. He has something that makes you not be able to take your eyes off the screen. Adam Cole is the same way. So both of these guys is a license to print money. I thought this angle to end NXT was absolutely fantastic. Now, I thought the other show on Wednesday, AEW Dynamite, I thought it was great. I thought it was really, really freaking good. And I thought we got a bit of a treat, and it was a little bit all over the place. I want to start with Dax Hardwood and if he's possibly really hurt. So we had a multi-man tag match. I believe it was 6-on-6. You had FTR, the Young Bucks, you had Kenny Omega, and you had Hangman Page taking on Brody Lee, Colt Cabana, and members of the Dark Order. This was a very good match. There was a whole lot going on with it because with that many guys, of course there's going to be. But we have a moment where Dax Hardwood has one of the members from the Dark Order laid out across his knee, and Cash Wilder goes up and comes down across the guy's chest, and next thing you know, Dax Hardwood is rolling to the side of the ring, and he's pointing at his knee. And it looked like he legitimately was hurt. The first thing he does is rip off his knee brace, and he's looking at his knee, and something's not right. I don't know if he dislocated a patella. I'm not sure. But they sold this so well that it made our rundown, and I have to ask you, because I'm not 100% sure, is he really hurt?
No, it's part of the storyline. I don't think he's hurt. Definitely, I agree with you 100%. Good selling in my mind. I don't think I've heard or read that he's been injured legitimately. So
I've not either. But yeah, I thought it was so good at the moment. It had to make the rundown because I'm like, is he really hurt? I don't know. Normally you can tell. And I was like, I'm not 100% sure what's going on here. I thought it was executed to perfection.
Executed to perfection. That's what you're supposed to do. And it's another among the storylines that just is awesome on AEW. Like you said, the whole show was great. I mean, how hard did you mark out when you saw Eric Bischoff? And it was, I had no clue. I was like, I thought it was going to be a wrestler. When it was like, no, it was like Eric Bischoff. I'm like, oh, it makes sense. He was just on a podcast with Tony Khan. It's the perfect fit. It plays off with Jericho. He played it perfectly. He was a natural. He looked relaxed.
The moment he was like, Jericho was like, I haven't liked you in 22 years, and Bischoff was like, it's been 24, and I know how you feel about me. I thought it was fantastic, dude. It was so good.
And we have to also mark out for Orange Cassidy. He played it perfectly. Oh my God, you got to hear him speak, and he was, he won the debate. Spoiler alert. It was awesome. And Jericho had his usual lines, but it was actually very well done. And that's all you can ask for was created. Look, you knew it wasn't scripted. You knew it was just like, okay, here's the stuff you got to do, deliver it well. And it was just a perfect segment to enhance the storyline. And then you had Hager beat up Orange Cassidy, and you had a perfectly executed finishing move from Chris Jericho, and it was flawless. It was great to set up their match upcoming, and I love the segment, seeing Bischoff there, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, you are bringing back the old-time hits and things like that, the nostalgia feel, but if you can work out a deal with Eric Bischoff, the nostalgia, look, you don't even have to make it where he has any power. Just let the man sit at the table and throw out ideas for 5 hours a week. Just, Eric, what do you think? What do you think about Orange Cassidy? What can make him a star? Okay. What do you think about Hardy? What do you think about him at his advanced stage? What do you think about Sammy Guevara? What would you do here? And you just let him just explain things. I think he would be a valuable asset behind the scenes in AEW. Look, Tony Khan signed Eric Bischoff. He doesn't have to be on camera. He doesn't have to hog the show. He doesn't need a stable. He doesn't need to be on the mic. Just let him consult. And that's how you get the best use of him, because he understands the game. He's got so much knowledge, and I think he would be a fit in that company. It would be amazing. I'm a fan of Eric Bischoff, and he has such good knowledge that I think that he'd be an asset for AEW. And it was just, hey, at the very least, we got to see him on TNT for the first time in 2 decades, and it was powerful, and it was fun.
Yeah, I thought it was really fun, and I marked out super hard. I thought that entire segment was put together well, whether it be Chris Jericho, Orange Cassidy, we actually get to hear the man speak for the very first time, or Eric Bischoff. I thought it was great. I thought this show was fantastic from start to finish, and what I'm realizing with AEW, the more and more we get to watch it, I don't want to say that they have a formula, but what they do is they give you what you want from a professional wrestling show, and the way that they package their angles lends itself to what the characters do best. So we had an angle with the Best Friends, and we had an angle with the Pride and Powerful, and it all centered around Trent Beretta's mom's van. And I thought it was one of the funniest angles, because the Best Friends end up beating Pride and Powerful, and they go and they take it out on Trent's mom's van. And they beat it with a sledgehammer, they spray paint it, they leave it on cinder blocks. And it was funny, but it got the message across that these guys are pissed off because they lost. And Trent Beretta's response was so damn good that it makes you laugh and you giggle a little bit, but it is packaged in such a way where you're like, man, that was awesome. That was really, really good. The one match that I kind of question a little bit, and I want to know where you kind of are on it. So the main event was Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin. And this match at times felt a little sloppy to me. The very initial punch that Jon Moxley throws busts open Darby Allin's mouth. Darby Allin then gets thrown off of the stage and goes flying into the ring post, and you could hear him hit the ring post. Not sure if it was his head, not sure if it was his hand, but a part of his body clanged really, really hard off the ring post. And Darby Allin, by the end of it, is a bloody mess. There was also a spot earlier where Matt Hardy takes a chair flush to the top of the head and bleeds all over the place from Sammy Guevara. There were parts of the show that were a little bit sloppy, and I don't mind the blood, but I need the blood when the blood is supposed to be there, not when it's an accident, because those accidents get guys hurt, and when guys get hurt, you don't get to see those guys wrestle or perform. So I wanted to know what you thought about those two incidences. The Matt Hardy-Sammy Guevara incident, where Matt Hardy takes the chair off the head and slashes his head wide open, blood everywhere. Or the Darby Allin and Jon Moxley match, where there were a couple different spots that seemed like they were miscues.
See, I noted that, but it paled in comparison to the worst moment on AEW for me. I believe it was the Big Swole Reba match. It was slow. And at first, the way in which I looked at that match, I said, okay, this is fast. And I was watching with my daughter. I got my 6-year-old watching AEW. She's a fan. I'm like, Olivia, who do you think is going to win this match? She's like, I don't know. And she's watching. All of a sudden, it's going so, and in my mind, I'm watching the match and it's so slow. All of a sudden, it ends and Big Swole wins. And my little one's like, that was fast. That was too fast. That was fast. And I was like, you just had a 4-minute match that really felt like it was a 20-minute match because of how slow-paced it was. Big Swole looks fine, great character. I think it was Reba. I didn't know, because if you thought that you watched something, she failed to get into the ring, which I don't think I've ever seen. She jumped up and then fell back down, and then she got into the ring, and it was like, this doesn't look like she knows what she's doing. And her movements weren't fluid, and I think that, I don't know her experience level, but I put a major thumbs down for that. That was the worst moment of AEW. Yeah, the Moxley match was a little bit too stiff, and you're probably right that they got to be careful, but they're pushing the boundaries. I mean, Jericho swears every week, and it is what it is. They want to bring out a little bit of edge, and I think the wrestling fans like that, like to say that, hey, this is more of a sport. that, hey, any guy could get hurt anytime. But yeah, you can't have it to the point where it gets to be like ECW, where it was so violent every week that you just had to keep upping the ante. You know, we've had thumbtacks, we've had, you know, wrestlers bleeding all over the place. I could definitely agree with you that they could tone it down a little bit. Let's get to some more clean wrestling, and let's stop with the whole Crimson every single week.
Yeah. I think with Reba, it was meant to come off like that. I don't think she's a wrestler. I think she's there just as Britt Baker's assistant, and Britt Baker basically fed her to the wolves because Britt Baker's character. So I think that was meant to be that way. But yeah, as
good.
Far as
it could have been cut out.
It wasn't great.
It's the big show. And when you're in the big show, you got to at least jump to the, you know, rewind it and check it out. She jumps and she almost hits the rope or bounces in a way, and she bounces back down. So I haven't seen that when you go under the top rope. When you go under the bottom rope, you can just roll under it. You can't mess that up. So that was funny all the way around. But hey, it is what it is. AEW won in the ratings. We're having some great stories. Good payoff next week. You get to see the Young Bucks in action, Cody Rhodes in action, obviously highlighted by Jericho, I think, Orange Cassidy. So it's going to be a good time in AEW. All right, cuz, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
So The Rock buys the XFL for $15 million. Well, actually, Dwayne The Rock Johnson and his business partner / ex-wife, Danny Garcia, as well as their new business financial partner, Jerry Cardinal's Redbird Capital, all purchased the XFL for $15 million on Monday. Question for you, XFL 3.0, is this a smart purchase for The Rock?
No. The first thing I thought of was how much of that 15 is yours? Because it's down the toilet. And me, being a Middle Eastern guy, I'm like, you know what? Vince McMahon is such a frugal individual. He got some of the money he paid back The Rock. He's like, okay, I paid The Rock, now he's paying me back.
Yeah, pretty much. Dave Meltzer of Wrestling Observer reported WWE has narrowed its plans for this year's draft to 2 dates in October, though it's possible the company could bump it back to September. Question for you again. Do we really need a draft? I mean, everybody can go everywhere they want, can't they? I mean, you've got both the Raw and the SmackDown women's champions as well as the tag team champions on Monday Night Raw and on SmackDown every single week. I don't think we necessarily need a draft right now.
No, absolutely not. I'm not a fan of that at all.
Y2J wants the Swiss Superman, saying, now we just have to get Cesaro in AEW, and then we'll really stir it up. Jericho said this on his Saturday Night Special series. He continued, I think Cesaro in AEW would be one of our top guys. Cesaro is absolutely fantastic, and I think I agree with Jericho. For his Intercontinental Championship defense against Seth Rollins that opened SummerSlam in 2018, Dolph Ziggler donned tights that had an Intercontinental Championship belt across them. So it was sublimated into his tights. WWE fined him. This was confirmed earlier this week in a tweet by Dolph Ziggler. Amazing. WWE finding a wrestler who is your Intercontinental Champion for having his tights wearing a Intercontinental Championship belt. Insane. WWE does things so weird. Anyone wondering where Austin Theory has been? Because I have. Well, according to Dave Meltzer, the 23-year-old is serving an unannounced suspension of sorts, which to me sounds like a very WWE thing to do. And in other more sad, depressing news, Marty Jannetty, if you remember him, formerly of the Rockers with Shawn Michaels. Earlier this week, in a since-deleted Facebook post, Jannetty wrote that he made a man disappear and that authorities should have looked in the Chattahoochee River. Assuming that Jannetty was maybe drunk or high because he does have an addiction problem, could have just been the drunken ramblings of a high madman, or could be something very, very serious. Authorities are investigating what is going on here with this situation. And that's it for this week's Wrestling News and Notes.
Always a good time talking professional wrestling. Great stuff, sir. Make sure to follow Adam on Twitter. The Superfly, Super Rich, Adam Strozinski. He'll be
super rich.
He'll be donning the new $1 million belt each and every broadcast. Look for photos. It's going to be huge. It's going to be bigger and better than the $1 Million Man's belt. It's going to be glistening because Adam drops money everywhere he goes. He's big fly, big spender man, and he's rolling around like Tony Khan over there
I wish.
Follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Make sure you get in the mix and message us during these great wrestling events. We love interacting with the supporters. Great stuff. Thank you guys for your support, subscribers, listeners, going up every single week. Anywhere your favorite podcast is located, all you got to do is search Detroit Sports Podcast. We're there. Hit that subscribe button, and our content will find you. Adam's got a couple other great podcasts, The Throwback, where he rewatches old Detroit Lions games, and The Practice Squad, where they got great guests and great insight into Adam and his co-host Brendan Riley's interesting world. Listen, you hear about Adam on Doc and Jock, but he lets it all hang out on The Practice Squad, and it's a must listen every single week. I enjoy it, and it's another good one this week.
Little caveat real quick, sir, before we go. Listen to this week's Practice Squad. I tell a fun story about what I did at a golf outing and how it was very, very inappropriate.
Oh boy, here we go. Gonna have to tune into that one. Stay tuned. I look forward to talking to you next week on the next edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.